meeting is being recorded.
All right.
Alrighty. Yes, sir. Let's get into it, man. I mean, you picked the topic. I'm just gonna, you know, just I guess just you do the you run the show. I'm gonna, answer, questions, just answer back to you and stuff
All
like
right.
that. I mean, give you my opinions on what I think and stuff like that. And I got some stuff I want to touch on too. So
Okay. Okay. Um, this video is going to be about the effects not controlling our own media has had on the Black community. Today we're going to mostly focus on Black America, but I think this could be a topic for the entire race. We could do this on a global scale, but we're just going to mostly stick to Black America today. Um, Something I want to touch on is all of the major Black companies, Black media companies. If you look at who owns them, very rare is it actually a Black person who owns them, and very rarely, if it is a Black person, is it actually a person of Black American descent who can relate to the struggles of Black Americans. I fight a lot of times foreigners. You've probably seen like these shows. I think it's like 20 Week V1 shows like that. Um,
yeah, like pop the balloon and stuff like. Is that what you're talking about? Or
yeah, yeah. A Congolese woman set that one up, and there's another one. I don't know which one it is. I think it's. I know Aaron the plumber was on it. And I think
right?
I don't. I don't think. I think it was a Jamaican woman. I'm not too sure, but I don't have no. I have no issue with them getting into media. But what I don't like is that they're getting into media that's corrosive and not productive to the race. And I feel like this right here is going to contribute more to diaspora wars, because this isn't good media. This is degenerate media. Um, and that's just talking about the Black people who do own media, right? They're typically immigrants who, be honest, very coonish, right? A lot of Black immigrants they're not, they don't really have the same experience with white people as Black Americans do. So they don't really understand what Black Americans are saying. And I think that's one reason why, like, Tariq Nasheed FBA movement is growing, because there is like a influx of stupidity from Black immigrants. But another thing is that all the other media channels are completely owned by, one of two groups. I'm not going to get into. Well, I'll say white people and then another group. I think people can figure out who that is. But you
I'd
know,
say it's mostly, small hat people. You know what I mean?
okay, no,
They
yeah,
can
yeah, okay, all
I
right,
mean, they control, not only media, but banking. You see what I'm saying? Lobbying, politics. I mean, it's just, if we don't call a spade a spade, let's call a spade a spade. I mean, everybody wants to talk about black fatigue and stuff like that, but and there's some, truth to that too. You know what I mean? Do most people want to live in predominantly black neighborhoods? No. Do I live in one now? No. I live in a white neighborhood. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, if we're gonna call out one race, let's call out all of the races. You know what I mean? Um, the opportunity for not less black people on the bottom of the totem pole, right? But if you talk about other races, you know what I mean. Do small hat people make it harder for, everybody? I'd say I'm gonna say yes. You know what I mean? So
no, no, they absolutely do, because they have a dominance in everything, and they have a very strong preference for themselves. I think they probably have the strongest preference for themselves than anyone else. They don't feel bad about excluding other people. I mean, they even give each other 0% interest loans, which I was floored when I heard that. That's astounding. But
right,
you know, you're right. It is mostly small head people that own the media companies, and I don't think they have really anyone's best interest at heart. Because even with white communities, they still flood them with nonsense. You know, maybe not to the same degree that they do with us, but they still flood them with nonsense. If you really want to see good
the thing
media,
is,
yeah.
oh, go ahead. Sorry, no, you finish your.
I was just saying, if you really want to see good media, I think you have to look at the media they watch. You know. Oh, sorry. Yeah. You have anything to say?
Um, when we're talking about media and how black people consuming and stuff like that. First of all, the problem is in the black community is that media is the biggest industry. You know what I mean? That's our only industry that I can see. You know what I mean? It's either you're going to be basketball player, a rapper, or a streamer, or somebody that's a social influence. You know what I mean? And that's kind of where the root of the cause is. We don't have any, black scientists, young black scientists, young black lawyers. And I mean, a very small percent, but most of the things that people are striving for in the black community is for fame and fortune. You know what I mean? They're not looking to actually build any skills. No one's looking to get into farming. We lack a critical skill. And so that's the reason behind it's very easy to influence somebody if that's all they're looking at. You know what I mean? Um, so that's kind of like how I view that. You know, that's just what it is. I mean, that's all black people are doing is just looking at how can I flex on social media? How can I build my social media presence? And we're willing to act like coons, and that just goes into the pot of more stereotypes of how we're viewed and stuff like that. So
Oh yeah, no, I agree. It's very rare that you meet a black person. And when I say black person, I'm talking about basically the entire race in America. Because I even noticed this, like black immigrants I encountered. Um, they none of them have any like true aspirations, and if they do, it's because their parents are pushing them into it. But it's not anything organic. Not everyone can be a basketball player. Not everyone can be an NFL player. Not everyone can be a rapper. Half of these guys, their rap sucks. And you're right. We don't have any. We're not developing critical skills. I think like less than 1% of farmers in America are actually black, and that's
right.
dangerous. Dangerous to be in such a weak position. And if I'm not mistaken, the number is going down actually. Like black farmers are selling their land rapidly. So it
If a
is.
race war was to really happen, my whole thing is like, how are we going to keep ourselves from being eradicated? You know, like
Mhm.
what type of skills do we have? What do we own? What type of capital do we have? Not everything is about, shaking ass and listening to sexy red. You know what I mean? And
No,
that's
yeah.
just for us to be that far gone from, realizing how society is treating us. Like, sure, is there racism in America? 100%. But bitching and whining and complaining about it really ain't gonna do nothing. You know what I mean? What are you gonna contribute to your race? You know, to make it harder to make it harder to kill us as a whole. You know what I mean?
No, no, I agree. I agree. Um,
A lot of black people have firearms, but do they know how to use them proficiently?
yeah.
Because that's one of the.
No, no, no. I agree with that. I think really, once again, this just comes down to media. Um, I think that we have to take control of the media narratives, and we need to make things like entertainment be an option, but not the only solution. Because everything around uh, black prosperity in America is just about entertaining other people. You're going to be an athlete, a rapper, just something. Maybe you post skits online, but it's always about entertaining other people. And so we have to make, because I know something, black people are very motivated, it's cool. And everyone is to some degree, but I know that's something that's very big amongst black people. If something's not cool, they don't want to do it. And so you have to make being a scientist cool to young black kids. You have to make being an engineer cool, so on and so on. So I want to know, like, how do you think you could do that?
I actually personally don't know how we would do that. I want to awaken black people as a
Mhm.
whole because one of the biggest things I'm seeing on the internet right now is tethering. If a black person comes from an immigrant like us, you know, um, they want to say that we're tethers and we can't really talk about, you know, African American issues. you know, me and you were both half African American as well, so I do believe that qualifies us to be able to talk about African American issues.
Mhm.
Biggest thing that I see, and it's in the same, it's the same across the board when we talk about black people. African American people have the same problem that Africans do. On
Yeah.
a global stage, we're pretty much docile. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I'd say that we're the softest race. We couldn't bust a grape in a fruit fight. We couldn't hurt a fly. You understand
Hmm.
what I'm saying? When it comes to street level violence, you know, street level crime, you know, that's kind of where we shine. You know what I mean? Just because we couldn't compete on a global stage when it comes to warfare or evil. You know what I mean? And that's what's kind of going to be our downfall. You know, we can't display violence on a global level. There's not an African country or a black country that has nuclear weapons, and so you know that should tell you one thing right there. Um, you know, and so I mean it's just it's the same thing across the board when it comes to black people, man. Like you know, yeah, do we commit more crime than everybody? But I would argue that we're the least violent, you know, race. In other words.
Yeah. Only to each other. Only to each other. We're very violent. Because even like a lot of African countries, you'll see uh, there's entire civil wars going on. Black people killing black people. Meanwhile, there's like European and Chinese multinational companies raping the entire country. And it's
Oh
like
yeah,
you can't put your guns down to attack the people who are creating these issues. And so, here's my thing with the whole like gang violence stuff. I don't even have a problem that it exists. I like the warrior mentality, but you have to change it and modify it to apply it to other people, not your brother. I think that's what we have to do. You know,
yeah, and I mean, are we possible? Are we capable of doing that? You know, because we're such a tribal people. Like I think that our you know how do I want to put this? We don't think past our society and our culture. You know, I mean, if somebody's oppressing you and all you can do is complain, but you'll go down the street and kill somebody that looks just like you, just because you're only thinking about the tribal aspect of it. You're only thinking about the tribe that you're warring with. You can't, you know, inflict violence on, you know, your oppressor. Not, you know, not trying to incite any type of, you know, riots or violence, but you know, it just baffles me that you know most black people cry about, you know, 400 years, 500 years of oppression, and there's never been a real, you know, revolution. You know, that's something that really puzzles me. You know, but we kill each other like you know flies. In other words, so
well, I would say we definitely could. Um,
and I also want to show you. I didn't mean to cut you off,
yeah,
but I also want to show you something too when I find it. But go ahead and say your point.
no, I definitely think we could get something going. We could definitely change the minds of black people, but I think I think one of the main things that holds the black community back is that I noticed that whenever a black person does something ignorant, a lot of black people say this set us back, and I want to change that whole frame because I feel like the problem is a lot of us are showing the impression everyone's going to make it, which that's just not the case, right? You're going to have to discard certain members, and so I think what we need is a coalition of black men globally who are intelligent and have the resources to do things, who can implement these, whatever policies, just whatever we need done. You know what I mean? You don't need 100 million man army to get things done. You just need maybe around 1,000 capable men with the resources to do it. You know,
Right.
'cause this is how other races are ran. The Chinese, the reason they're doing so well is because the best of them are running. The average Chinese person is an idiot too. You know,
Oh yeah, I mean when you're talking about different races and stuff like that, I want to set the record straight. I mean I've met I mean there's a bigger population of white people in America. I've met more dumb white people than I've met you know dumb black people. It's very even keel. The person in the see what they do is they take a average you know dumb retard black person from the hood and they compare him to somebody that's pretty much college educated. Of course, the college educated, you know, person of a different race is going to be, you know, on a different wavelength than the idiot from the hood, right? But what they don't do is they don't take that idiot from the hood and match it up to somebody that grew up in a trailer park or a very rural area in a white society or somebody that's lower income or lower class in a Hispanic society and kind of put them together. They're going to. I'd say that the black person is probably going to be slightly smarter than one of those people. You understand what I'm saying? Just due to their internet use. Somebody far in a rural town that doesn't have any access to running water, let alone internet, is probably going to be dumber than the black person in the ghetto. So I wish I
No,
could find this video.
no, I absolutely agree. They do that. That's like it's the same. There's this IQ test that came out, and like all the like white supremacists on Twitter were loving this because they were saying that like white kids develop like mental, like cognitive skills quicker than black kids. And in the tests, they took like a regular average white kid and they compared the kid to like this like kids from Kenya who were like
Right,
refugees and like starving and they had like mental disabilities.
right,
So they took like the worst example of a black kid and compared it to like an average white kid. And
right.
now they use this as like a template to prove like white mental superiority over black people. And so yeah, that's something we have to we have to contend with that because you know this isn't healthy. And now because it's so common now that we're so used to seeing ourselves as stupid. When one of us is intelligent, it's almost weird
Right.
because a lot of black people look at you funny. I actually I would say like anytime like I want to talk about something more complex, I can have these conversations with other races better a lot of times than I can with black people. And that's a very serious issue. And I'm not even
Yeah,
talking about black people in particular.
most black people ain't really thinking about nothing. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's whoever you want to blame it on. We have been programmed to just not be able to think past you know a pair of shoes, a couple blunts, ass shaking, and some henny. You know what I'm saying? And that's the thing that's really going to be our downfall. You know what I mean? If you don't have the strength in your mind to be able to understand, say, hey, yeah, I'm being oppressed, right? Um, not everything is about inciting violence, but being able to kind of stick up for yourself and be like, hey, somebody's oppressing me, I have to do something about it. You know, whether it's economically, whether it's educating myself, you understand what I'm saying? Being able to have all of my swords sharpened for battle, no matter what it is. And that black people are just not thinking like that. You know what I mean? So I don't know if it's been programmed out of us or what, but
that's what it is. That's what it is. And I'm going to take the step and say it. Um, you know, I really think one of the biggest issues with black people globally. I really think one of the biggest issues with black people globally is the partaking in foreign religions. I really believe that because
I can get down with that.
whenever I say like the history of Africa, it seems like Africans who stuck to more traditional African religions were more hostile and were more aggressive towards the enemy. But whenever they start converting to Christianity or Islam, they become more docile.
Most black people worship, white religions. You understand what I'm saying? And so that's what kind of goes into our belief of the supremacy. You understand what I'm saying? First of all, you grow up, you see, white Jesus and things like that. You see a white Muhammad. Whether you're Christian or Muslim, it's definitely going to take a toll on you mentally. Like, there's no way, that for one, before the colonists came, you probably had your own religion, your own spirituality, your own beliefs. But two, let's say that is the truth. Let's say that the Bible was the only, or Christianity is the only religion out there, or Islam or whatever, and you decide to follow that, right? But you don't get to see yourself. You don't get to see an image of yourself being holy, in other words, or being godlike, and so that's going to take a toll on anybody. You know what I mean? That's why I stepped away from monotheistic religions. I do plan on completing the Bible. I do plan on completing the Quran, but do I see it as the books for Black people? Probably not. I do believe that if you wanted to follow a religion, I do believe that the Hebrew Israelites are onto something. Do I believe that they're the true Jew? Maybe, maybe not. That's not really why I say that, but I think that if somebody was to want to follow a religion, follow Judaism, and that's going to kind of take you to the path that you want to go. You know what I mean?
Okay. Yeah, because and I say it's because I know something like this is something that applies to all Christians. Really, I'm really talking about Christians with this. And so it's not just a black thing, but this is especially prominent amongst black people. Is that Christians tend to not really take their religion serious and not really care about it until it's time to get them to do something. Then they start talking about how Jesus is going to come back and save the world, and it's like you really don't believe that. You only
Right.
saying it now because I'm telling you, you need to go do something.
Right.
At the very least, I can say Muslims have jihad. I can say that, and that is a call to action on its own. And jihad is not necessarily violent; it just means holy struggle. It can mean that
Right.
too. Not only about holy war; it just means getting up and doing something. So that's at the very least Islam is that. But Christianity, it's a very slavish religion because you're just waiting for Jesus to come back. And maybe he will. I don't know, but you don't wait. I think that's the issue.
Right.
You have to do something.
I,
So
just, I really wish I could find this video. That's what I'm looking for right now. In a gist, if I could find it, I'll find it. But in a gist, with it, it's like an old. I'd say it's probably from like at least the 1920s or even older than that. But they were talking about like the nature of the Indian versus the black man, and they said that the Indian is as close to a black person as a dog is to a coyote. What they mean by that is that you know the dog, you can smack the shit out of a dog, you can kick it, you can beat it, and put it on a leash, and it's still going to lick your feet. Where as an Indian, um, they're if you do that to a coyote, you know what I mean. They're going to be trying to tear your flesh off, and
yeah,
so that's in a nutshell is what is wrong with black people. You understand what I'm saying? We're just not. We haven't shown the ability to in many different buckets to apply pressure and show aggression in on a global stage. You understand what I'm saying?
yeah,
I'll keep going back to that. I think that's the biggest thing is what's wrong with black people. Like, yeah, they don't have skill. We don't have knowledge of self. And we don't have basic knowledge to kind of, thrive in business and stuff like that. But, it's just really on a global standpoint, like what global nation, what nation has or black nation has, any nuclear weapons? There is none.
yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Um, or a formidable army for that matter.
Well, I can say this. Um, One thing we need to be doing is empowering microchip production in Africa. If we can empower microchip production in Africa and get at least one country to be a global producer of microchips, um, then that would definitely help out the military situation, because most modern weapons require, microchips. And you don't want to be reliant on someone else for that. And I think if we could get a cultural revolution going, and if we could get that going, that would definitely help our military situation. Um, which country would this be the best to do in? I don't know, but I definitely agree. We don't have the ability to show force like a global because I look at China as I look at China as like an inspirational story because it really is. If you look at what China was going through, like 100 years ago, you have like the idea of the century of humiliation. The Chinese went through a lot of the same things that you could say Black people went through globally. They weren't
Right.
colonized completely in the way that Africa was, but there were foreign soldiers in China who could do whatever they want. They could go in, rape Chinese women, kill Chinese citizens. They could do whatever they want. China had the power to stop them. The
Right.
British were pushing drugs all throughout China. China was split into like a dozen different districts, dozen different regions with warlords who control everything. China was just a horrible place to live. But you see, they moved from where they're at now to where they are today. And so I
Right.
think Black people need to realize is that China is not necessarily perfect template for the Black race, but it's something that should be studied. Because I'm
I
very
mean, I would say, oh, go ahead. Go
no,
ahead, finish
I'm
that.
very interested in China between like 1920s to now. What were you gonna say?
What I was going to say is that, then this is going to segue me into my next point. I'm probably going to ramble for a little bit, but I think it's very,
Go ahead. Go
definitely
ahead.
good. You know, one of the things that, are really big, in a racist community, in a white supremacy community.
10 minutes left.
Sorry,
10 minutes left.
I didn't catch it. What you said? Okay,
10 minutes.
got you. So let me
Yeah.
get this off real quick. Um, yeah. So they don't respect our history. Um,
Yeah.
and one of the reasons that they don't really respect our history, one, the average black person doesn't even know about, African history, sub-Saharan African history, rather than a white person. You understand what I'm saying? So the common belief is that, we were running around butt ass naked, with spears. And that's just, not the case. Am I one of those black people that's like, oh, we were kings and queens? No. The people that are in the Americas, highly unlikely that we were kings and queens. Let's be real. But the people in Africa, their ancestors and stuff like that, they are ancestors of kingdomships and stuff like that. So there were kingdoms there. Black people at that time, and on a smaller scale, were very nomadic. They were hunters and gatherers and stuff like that. You can really compare the lifestyle of a ancient sub-Saharan African, very closely to like a Mongol, um, very closely to like Genghis Khan's people. So, they would migrate, to many different places, in the area. They would hunt and gather for their food, so that's why they didn't really have, two-story buildings. There was not really a set place. They were kind of moving around and stuff like that. So that's why you see huts the same way with the Mongols and stuff like that. You understand what I'm saying? And so I did want to address, when I was listening to that, what was it, that Nick Fuentes and what's her name?
And this Kundis.
Candace Owens, yeah, Candace Owens. You know what I mean? Because she's just sat there and just was like, and I mean, it's fine. She doesn't really know, too much about Black history, of course, right? But to let somebody sit there and say, a bold face, like, I understand. I want people to be racist. I want them to have their own opinions, and I want them to speak their truth. But you have to speak your truth with facts. You understand what I'm saying? If you, what did he say that Black people didn't discover the wheel until the colonists came by. And I mean, you could just Google search it. I said, did sub-Saharan Africans have knowledge of the wheel before colonization? Let me do this. Yes, many parts of Africa used the wheel before colonization. These technologies like the pottery wheel, water wheel, and even wheeled chariots and carts existed in various regions, particularly in North Africa in the Sudanic zone. However, widespread adoption of the wheel transport for commerce hindered, sub-Saharan Africans due to the lack of suitable roads and infrastructure, and prevalent alternative transport methods. What they did is they pretty much used pack animals. And they had the Nile River, so I mean they didn't really have to use wheels. It's not really if they was going to transport somewhere, the Nile River will pretty much take you wherever the hell you need to go, in Africa and stuff like that too, and stuff. And so was it used for transportation? No, but was it used for pottery? 100%. And you could even see cultures like the Nubians. Who else that had Kush tribes? They had various forms of chariots and stuff like that. So I mean, like I said, I want people to speak the truth, but I also want them to speak facts. At the same time. If you're not a historian, I understand it. Do I have credentials in history? No, but I just have enough knowledge, and I've done enough research to know that that's just completely false. In other words, um, but
Yeah.
yeah, I'm off my soapbox.
Um. You can see it, but this is from Dar Tichet. That's in Mauritania. It's a very old civilization, around 4,000 or so years old.
Mhm.
And this is like rock carvings depicting wheeled like pack animals with wheels behind them. You can kind of see it like right here. This was a black civilization. All the bodies they excavated were black. Um, so, and these people, as far as we're aware, never met, outsiders, except like Berbers or like North Africans, but they never met, Arabs or Europeans. So you can't use that excuse. Well, Arabs gave it to them. That's something that I've noticed too, because like I am seeing the rise in popularity of like authentic black, like sub-Saharan African history, and now I'm starting to see also a rise in discrediting it. I saw this one guy, his name is Robert Seffert. He said Mansa Musa was a white man with blonde hair and blue eyes. And I'm like, okay. But and that's not good. I don't like this, but it is somewhat good because before you have never gotten people like that to talk about it. But I think it shows that black history is becoming more popular. I think that black kids growing up now are like they're going to be more likely to be exposed to black history than, when I was growing up, when you were growing up. Because when I was growing up, I literally did not hear anything. Only thing I knew was slavery and colonialism. And when that's all you know, you're going to have a low self-esteem thinking that's your entire history. So.
Right, right. And I mean, so, and growing up, there just really wasn't any, understanding of it or any, books about it at all. And so now, people are, kind of starting to get more exposure to it and everything. And I just made it a search, for a very long time to, try to find out, and understand, because like I said, it's just impossible, for one, for us to, not have any type of history at all, or not to have any type of kingdomships at all, when, life started in, the Horn of Africa pretty much. So, I mean, that's a whole different other topic, but.
Right here, this is like a wheeled cart from the kingdom of Ashanti that would be in Ghana today.
Right.
And there's tons of
And what century was that?
This was before the colonial period. That's all I know. But I'm guessing probably 16th century. Europeans were in Africa at this time, but they didn't colonize it yet. So, so for anyone who wants to, because they love that wheel art. I've noticed it. They really love the wheel art. I think they like it more than anything else. But I don't pay it any mind. In fact, there's a story. I have to find it. But I know some French diplomats, they brought a wheeled carriage to the king of Dahomey, I think in 17 something. And, the French were explaining what a wheel was. And the king of Dahomey told him, I already know what it is. Why are you talking to me about this?
Right.
That wasn't something that they really utilized on a large scale. And also, next video, if you want, we can go into cities. It's also like the two-story building argument. That's not even true. Some parts is true, but there
are still some two-story buildings, ancient in ancient Africa. I forget, some of the places that I saw some. I know for sure. I'd say Sudan. I'd have to fact check myself on that.
Yeah, they were.
But and then again, I mean, it's just a different culture too. You know what I mean? Did the Mongols, did they have two-story buildings? No, they would pack up every so often and move to a different part of the steppe. So, I mean, that's just, and that's not has anything to do with, how advanced a society is. You understand what I'm saying? But, still, there is still some evidence of two-story buildings as well. So.
But here's what gets me though. I feel like a lot of them think that every European, right, lived in a castle back then, because they make fun.
Exactly. It was shit on the streets. You know what I mean? In England, you know what I mean? So it very just poor living conditions. In the middle in the medieval ages. So
yeah. We have 1 minute left. Anything else you want to say?
I think we can wrap it up, man. If you want to go ahead and figure out a way to send this video to me, and if you want to post it, man, I'm cool with that too. So
yeah, I'll post it. All right, thank you. This is a good talk.
Yeah, man. And you want to call me later, and then we'll get it figured out on how to, kind of get it exposed and stuff like that. So
all right. Have a good day.
You too, man.
All right.